See,
this meeting is being recorded.
Perfect. You know, I work with business.
This meeting is being recorded.
I work with businesses on enterprise development and startup strategy. And when I'm at work, I'm actually an associate dean of learning and teaching, and I work in the university environment. Okay, so that's a very brief introduction to me and all that's required. But I am really keen to get started. So I'd just like to say a big welcome to everyone, all of our speakers. So thank you so much for joining us. Big welcome to Her Excellency, Dr. Barrister Teresa Ibas. Thank you so much for putting together the Divine Mercy Foundation and for giving us a great opportunity and reason to meet for today. Thank you very much, Dr. Adar, as well, for your hard work in putting everything together, the meticulous efforts with everything and making sure that we're all here on time. And to our speakers, Her Excellency Ambassador Prophetess Lisa Parks, Her Excellency Ambassador Reverend Dr. Bockway Burnley. Did I do well? Yeah. Did I do well? Her Excellency.
I tried.
Thank you. Diana Kennedy as well. Her Excellency Ambassador Vanessa Rosa and Miss Mary Kirek. So thank you all for dedicating the time to join us today. So I'm just going to do a very brief introduction and then I'll introduce you to Her Excellency Dr. Barrister Teresa Ibas to do the opening address. So just a little bit of background information. Now, every year in the month of March, the United Nations has allowed discussions and conversations and global opportunity on issues of women and issues around women. The Divine Mercy Foundation for Vulnerable Children and the Less Privileged is pleased to join the global discussion reflecting on the priority theme, which for today is achieving gender equality and the empowerment of all women and girls in the context of climate change, environmental and disaster risk reduction policies and programs. And this is all for CSW66 for our session today. So Divine Mercy Foundation anchors on this theme in bringing its mission on education, social inclusive well-being on vulnerable children and communities to life. DMF has taken concerns on growth and development of vulnerable citizens amongst us and in our community very seriously. And in considering the key issues faced by the less privileged communities, including access to quality and inclusive education at various levels, denying them opportunities for their children, and in cases where they do damage, to make the provision for education, the children are sometimes unable to actually complete their studies as a result of things such as shortage of funds or other unexpected circumstances. Secondly, the poor quality of education received by children who are unable to acquire basic literacy, technical and vocational skills, and a lack of relevance between the curriculum of teaching and learning are neglected greatly amongst the vulnerable community. These and many others have over time stifled the growth of societies, of our societies more importantly. The mission of Divine Mercy Foundation for Vulnerable and Less Privileged Children is committed to working around the theme of achieving education and the enabling opportunities of vulnerable children in the context of climate change in a post-COVID-19 era. In the past year, in the context of COVID-19, Divine Mercy Foundation became committed to teacher skill development and digital training program for community classroom teachers by providing 500 selected teachers with training and laptops. They also provided scholarships and sponsored teacher exchange programs from rural to urban schools, and enacted action on virtual expert training on teachers' consciousness for teachers in community schools, in keeping with the United Nations clarion call to the Decade of Action. And that's just the tip of the iceberg in terms of what DMF has been up to. So DMF, in keeping to the global agenda of CSW66 Session Priority theme, affirms our continued zeal to contributing to the concerns of poor education quality through discussion and sharing at this parallel event on achieving education and enabling opportunities for vulnerable girls in the context of climate change in a post-COVID-19 era. So with this said, it is the perfect moment to welcome Her Excellency, Dr. Barrister Teresa Ibas, for the welcome remarks and a brief outline of the DMF journey. Her Excellency is also the founder of the Divine Mercy Foundation for Vulnerable Children, and less privileged community. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Tonisha. In fact, you've said it all, but I think I still have to present my opening remark. Thank you for that wonderful introduction.
Thank you.
I bring you greetings all from the chair and members of the family of Divine Mercy Foundation for vulnerable and less privileged children. I would like to thank you all for always carving out time from your busy schedules to discuss the matters that are most important to Divine Mercy Foundation for vulnerable and less privileged children on the future of vulnerable and less privileged children, more importantly, girls in vulnerable community. So I welcome you to our virtual parallel event being held during the 66th session of the United Nations Commission on the Status of Women, CSW66. Every year in the month of March, the United Nations allows discussions, conversations, and global opportunity on issues of women and around women. Divine Mercy Foundation for Vulnerable Children is pleased to join the global discussion reflecting on the priority theme, achieving gender equality and the empowerment of all women and girls in the context of climate change, environmental and disaster risk reduction policies and programs for the CSW66 session. Divine Mercy Foundation anchors on this theme in bringing its mission on education, social and inclusive well-being on vulnerable children in communities. Since the establishment of DMF, we have taken concerns on the growth and development of vulnerable citizens among us in our community. DMF, in considering the key issues faced by the less privileged communities, including access to quality and inclusive education at various levels, denying them opportunities for their children, and in cases where they do manage to make this provision for education, the children are sometimes unable to complete their studies as a result of shortage in funds or other unexpected circumstances. Secondly, the poor quality of education received by children who are unable to acquire basic literacy, technical and vocational skills, and lack of relevance between the curriculum of teaching and learning are neglected greatly among the vulnerable community. These and many others have other times stifled the growth of our societies, which the mission of Divine Mercy Foundation for Vulnerable and Less Privileged Children is committed to in working around the theme, achieving education and the enabling communities of vulnerable children in the context of climate change in post-COVID-19 era. In the past year, in the context of COVID-19, Divine Mercy Foundation became committed to teacher skills, digital training programs for community classroom teachers by providing 500 selected teachers involved in the training with laptops, provided scholarships and sponsored teacher exchange programs from rural to urban schools, enacted action on virtual expert training on teachers' consciousness for teachers in community schools in keeping with the United Nations Clarion Call to the Decade of Action. DMF, in keeping to the global agenda of CSW66 Session Priority theme, affirm our continued innate passion to contributing to the concerns on poor education quality through discussion and sharing at this parallel event on achieving education and enabling opportunities for vulnerable girls in the context of climate change in a post-COVID-19 era. The impacts of climate change on female education have been highlighted in various research studies over time and across various nations. Globally, it is estimated that environmental threats, including weather-related disasters and disease outbreaks, disrupt the education of approximately 37.5 million learners each year, according to the organization Their World. It's an educational organization, 2018 report. In low and middle income countries, persisting gender discrimination and harmful gender norms mean adolescent girls living in poverty are often the most vulnerable to the least visible impacts of climate change. Climate change is already being felt across communities in Ghana, Malawi, Tanzania, Zambia, and Zimbabwe, with unpredictable weather patterns, flood and droughts, reducing farming yields and threatening already insecure family incomes. In Malawi, only 16 out of 100 children enroll in secondary school, with girls as a small portion. A young Nigerian female named Tamilore, in an interview recently conducted in November 2021 with Assembly, a digital publication, explained that climate change has major effects on education, like damaging school buildings, limiting students' access to schools, affecting concentration of students from hunger, and causing poor hygiene in some of the schools. In continued concerns to ensuring the future of the girl child, the United Nations has maintained its commitment to the global agenda in focus of the girl child. The United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, UNESCO, the data used showed that educating girls could result in a massive reduction in emissions of 51.48 gigatons by 2050. 130 million girls around the world are not in school, although this figure is down from over 200 million in 1998. In Mali, women with secondary education are higher, have an average of 3 children, while those with no education have an average of 7 children. The United Nations currently projects that the world's population will grow from 7.3 billion today to 9.7 billion by 2050, with most of that growth being in developing countries, including regions such as Sub-Saharan Africa. But recent research shows that if girls' education continues to expand, that number would total 2 billion fewer people by 2045. A 2017 Brookings Institute study suggests that for every additional year of schooling a girl receives on average, her country's resilience to climate disaster can be expected to improve by 3.2 points as measured by the Notre Dame Global Adaptation Initiative, NDGAIN. That's the index they gave, which calculates a country's vulnerability to climate change in relation to its resilience. Educated women make more productive agricultural plots and can be more effective stewards of food, soil, trees, and water as nature's cycles inevitably change. Therefore, educating girls is more effective in the climate emergency than many green technologies. This is seen again in resilience.org 2020. With this said, it is very clear that achieving education and enabling opportunities for vulnerable girls in the context of climate change in a post-COVID-19 era has great impact on the girl child, which DMF is vouched to ensure much effort is made to reposition the future of the girl child, especially in vulnerable communities. And in the coming year, DMF will invest in girls' education in order to foster climate participation and leadership. DMF will develop girls' life skills for a green economy, maintain individual expert training in the context of post-COVID-19 era for teachers to create platforms for improvement of teaching and learning in vulnerable communities. We will work to establish girl-child exchange education programs to enable adequate empowerment initiatives that will strengthen girls in vulnerable community to stand up to their future in the context of any climate and environmental actions. We will advocate to local partners and government towards girls' safety, well-being, and access to and enrollment in education. At DMF, our mission is with clarity, and we are still committed to the future of the girl child. The future of the girl child in vulnerable communities is in our hands, and time is now for us all to adopt teaming approach. Let us adopt teaming approach in working towards achieving education and enabling opportunities for vulnerable girls in the context of climate change in a post-COVID-19 era. I sincerely admonish all of the speakers today and all participants, and do wish that the lessons from this event will not only strengthen the mission of DMF on the girl child, but will create enabling opportunities that will advance the cause of the girl child in vulnerable communities in the context of climate action and the post-COVID-19 era. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. So next up, I would like to see if anyone has any questions or anything that they would like to say. You're very welcome. I can see Nadine Grisby says blessings to all and thank you for the invitation to join. You're more than welcome. Thank you for joining us. And Her Royal Highness Princess Shepi Motalong says thank you for this conference. Joining from South Africa. I really like that. You know, Ibas says very well said. So thank you so much, everyone. Please feel free to continue to use the chat area, especially if you have anything to say, whether it be compliments or questions. We're definitely here for that, and I will be paying attention to that between talks. Thank you so much. So next on
Read more comments. Read more comments. I have more comments.
More comments? You're enjoying it. See, they're loving it. More comments, please, everybody. Okay, so please, I would like to just request advance forgiveness for any names I mispronounce. But I'm very excited to have a go, and I think that's what matters. The spirit is there. So Kede Ibas says, Kede Ibas Adegon says, thank you for the wonderful and enlightening presentation. Appreciate that. Ukbemi Ibokete says, brilliant presentation.
And what?
Can you hear? Can you hear me?
Yes, now we
Oh,
can hear
okay.
you.
Okay, great. So where was I? So yes, Esther Tab says, Apostle Esther sending greetings and thank you for the invite. Suiwa Monier says, thank you, joining from Nigeria. Andrea Harmon says, great presentation. And Esther Omijeli says, thank you as well said. Thank you so much, everyone. Please do continue to use the comment box. Your comments are heavily anticipated. Okay, so in order for us to move on, we're going to move straight into the keynote presentation. And our keynote presentation today is being brought to us by the amazing Her Excellency Ambassador Reverend Dr. Bokwe Burnley. The presentation, thank you. It's like a permanent assessment. The topic of the presentation is achieving gender equality and the empowerment of all women and girls in the context of climate change, environmental and disaster risk reduction policies and programs. And Her Excellency is the co-chair of the Department of Leadership and Women's Affairs for the International Consulting Cabinet, Word of Life Ministries International. Thank you so much for joining us today. Please feel free to begin your presentation.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me here and inviting me. And again, thanks to Her Excellency, Dr. Barrister Teresa Ibas and Dr. Adar and everyone else who just worked hard to make this possible for us to sit here and learn from each other and work together with each other to achieve a lot of great things that I know we all want to achieve. And we all know the topic as she just announced, but the reason why I chose to start from the Sustainable Development Goals is because I just wanted us to have a little background. I love talking on women and girls empowerment, but I always try not to take it out of context from the global goals of the United Nations, because women's rights are human rights. So I just never want to talk about women's rights in isolation. I like to talk about it in the context of everything that is happening all around us, because that is our reality. Everything that is happening around us does affect us, and we affect everything that is happening around us. And so I want to start from there. And I'm starting from there because now the world, everything seems so bleak. We went through COVID-19 and we are still going through it. And then now there's the Ukraine war. And then this morning there was something about a tsunami. Yeah. So, but I remember that when these Sustainable Development Goals were launched in 2015, in fact, they effectively started 1st of January 2016, I remember the hope and the excitement that was in everybody's mind, because it was such a bold move toward trying to solve global problems. I remember also because I was there at the United Nations as a delegate representing SICA International. So it was, the atmosphere was positive. It was also a movement, a bold movement from the Millennium Development Goals from the prior 15 years that had 8 main things to achieve. And then this time it's like they went over the top, they had 17 goals. It was exciting because in those 17 goals, a lot of, in fact, each and every one of those 17 goals had serious impact on women. So I was excited to be there. and we were all looking forward to it. But then 4 years down the road, COVID hits. And then all the gain and the enthusiasm and the passion that and the achievements that had been made started to shrink, because suddenly all the resources were going toward us surviving a pandemic like one that we had never seen before. A lot of things were new, and you know the rest, because by the grace of God, we lived through it. We all lived through it, and we're here. So I'm not going to go much into that. And so for all those years, I had a passion. I keep looking at this colorful, really inspiring display of the goals. And I keep thinking, what are we going to do? It looks so hopeful. We cannot afford to be in this kind of despair. And that brought me to, thankfully, what we're going to talk about today, the role of education in the lives of women and girls, you know, in the context of climate change. And I found one thing in those 17 goals. I came to realize that some of those goals were more connected to women's education than I had imagined before. And so I'm going to talk particularly about one foundational thing that I think, in my opinion, I think if we looked at it in that way and we approached it from that way, it would really help us to regain the grounds that we lost because of COVID. So I'm not going to talk about just education. I'm going to talk about the pursuit of education of women and girls, the kind of education, not just generally, and all education is good, but the kind that favors a more scientific, mechanical, and industrial approach to agriculture is a stronger and a more reliable way to go. Because I looked at it, and then we think about this. You know, statistics from Blog Resource Watch says that about 1/3 of the world's population is employed in agriculture. Okay, so that's a significant amount. But then when you go to look at the next thing, you think to yourself, the next slide says that the SDGs #1 says no poverty. Now, if we get girls and women to become more involved in agriculture, we are going to go a long way to solving at least 9 of the goals that were set in that problem. And I'm going to talk about those briefly. Okay, ending poverty. We have these statistics. We have the statistics that tell us that 70%, for example, 70% of women in South Asia are employed in agriculture. 70%. 60% of women in sub-Saharan Africa are employed in agriculture. So what does that tell us? That if we put more money into agriculture, into educating women and girls about better practices in agriculture, we will be putting more money in these women's pockets. That's not all. We will be solving the problem. The second goal of the SDG will be solving zero hunger, because a better education means better practices in agriculture, which means maximum output. And then guess what? Statistics from the World Food Program says 60% of the world's chronically hungry people are women and girls. So if 60% are women and girls, and we are putting more money toward better agricultural practices, guess what? We are also tackling the 60% hungry women and girls, giving them food. And by the way, who studies in an empty stomach and understands what they are being taught anyway? You know what I mean? So I started to see this connection. The third goal says good health and well-being. Guess what? If we put more money in education, educating the girls about better agricultural practices, what does that lead to? It leads to better quality of food, and food is the best form. Good quality food is the best form of preventative medicine. So we will have healthy mothers, and healthy babies. So it keeps going on. And then I looked at goal number 5. It talks about gender equality. And then I said, if we educate these women in better practices, a more scientific, mechanical, and industrial way of producing, guess what? Then it gives gender equality in this sense. Agricultural work, farming is very labor intensive. And so the women were already at a disadvantage because a lot of those things were about brute force. But if we get it more scientific, more mechanical, then at the end of the day, the women stand a better chance because it's not about your brute force, it's not about the muscles, it's not about the six-pack, it's about your brain. And as we know, wisdom and knowledge doesn't have gender barriers. So, and then I went to the number 4 goal, which is really why we are here, education, quality education. And like I said, more specifically, education of women and girls. Women and girls make up over half of the world's population. But guess what? According to statistics by UN Interagency Task Force on Rural Women, they came up with the statistic that 796 million illiterates in the world, and 2/3 of those are women and girls. So women and girls, again, majority of the illiterates. But guess what? In the process of educating them in agriculture, which will solve world hunger, which will give them money, which will give them good health, which will give them all the things that I've said, guess what? This study will help these women in so many different, I did a research on careers, different kinds of careers that are connected with agriculture. And I was shocked. There are aspects of agriculture that have got to do with marketing, journalism, engineering, you know, you name it. So when we give these girls a better education, guess what? We are going down a path. Statistics show from that same study that for every extra 1 year that a girl gets in primary school education, it gives her a 10 to 20% better wage. Okay, so having looked at all of those things, I have a little video that I want to share with us. It's just a 1.5 minute video. And it was just a practical representation. I hope it plays because it was done unprofessionally, but I just thought, wow, this would help to explain. Okay, so I want you guys to pay attention to the background. Look at the goat in the background, far there to the right.
When you plant your child, we plant all the places where we see my woman they work for this. We don't put plantain there all, but that good they run chop all. Those goods they run eat all the plantains, all everything finished, no fence. See, don't you see elastic door rotate? Like how do you want this so? You see? You don't have to. No, you see how the stick don't rotate. Why not rotate? So the fence they fall, they enter, then go begin to chop all things we plant them. So the case in that with the face and for here. I don't try for go bring someone. I mean for some more still replace them. But no way. Now only net we try for manager or say we try for say we figure small thing for chop because the chop go they spoil them. Anything we put them go the chop them. And we don't know what to do. I told him that with the face and here.
Okay, thank you so much. So that little video just captures everything. This site, this picture here is common to most developing countries. Can you just imagine how many hours it would take them with the tools that they've got to farm that land? Now, can you imagine after having planted all of that, because of climate change, there's shortage of food everywhere, the goats and whatever else have you come and eat the food? But that is practically what this couple face, and so many other people around the world. That's why I was saying we need to mechanize agriculture and solve at least directly 9 of those goals that were set out. And then I don't have time to even show the connection with the all 17 of them connected with agriculture, climate change, and all of that, you know. So look at the situation in Ukraine and Russia right now. Russia and Ukraine accounted for 30% of the world's production in wheat, maize or corn, and sunflower oil. But because of this crisis, you can imagine how many countries right now are without that. But if we worked on agriculture globally and we empower the women, we help them, like the man said, to secure their land through fencing, to secure their land legally by getting land certificates, to send them the equipment that they need, to organize them in partnerships where they can work together in solidarity, because in that village where they are, that is the story all across. Can you just imagine what we would do, what we would achieve? We would take one approach, we would solve one problem and inadvertently or indirectly solve at least 9 other global problems. So I want to encourage us that are here, please do something. Like I said to that couple, I took their permission before showing their video, because I said, well, I'll come here, I'll show your video. You guys are an example. You are not the exception, but you are actually the example. You are the majority. And if there are any among us who would love to help that couple, and not just that couple, because I talked with him about plans of walking the whole village. And I know that there are so many listening to me right now from different parts of developing countries who are thinking the same thing. If we just organized ourselves and moved in that direction, we will take care of so many other things. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I mean, as you were talking, I said, I'm going to need to take notes. It makes no sense. I need notes. So for anyone who didn't have the opportunity to take notes, I have some. Would you like me to share some of my keynotes with you, some of the highlights that I've gathered? 1 for yes in the chat box. If you want some of those, I can definitely let you know what those were. But that was a really, really amazing presentation. Thank you so much. Okay, I can see the yeses coming in. So some of the key takeaways I noted down was we need to mechanize agriculture. That was one of your key points, wasn't it? The whole concept of mechanizing it. Secondly, we need to empower more women into the agriculture sector, right? Because it resolves a lot of issues, you said. Also, some of the issues it resolves is it provides better quality of food. Much better quality of food because we're making food, the food is fresh, it's locally produced. And you also said it was the best form of preventative medicine, because then it also moves in and supports of healthy mothers and babies, right? You also mentioned the fact that mechanized agriculture provides gender equality. The sector is very labor intensive, so a scientific and mechanical industry allows women to use their minds and removes the physical strength aspect of the gender barrier, which I thought was amazing, something I never really thought about before. And then we moved into education, and you mentioned that women and girls make up over half of the world's population. However, of the 796 million illiterate people in the world, you said 2/3 of those are women and girls. Exactly, powerful presentation. I totally agree, Andrea. And then one of my last note you had here, what I've got here says, every 1 year that a girl spends in primary education gives her a possible 10 to 20% extra wages as an adult. Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing all of that with us. For those of you who are taking notes, please feel free to also pop some of those notes into the chat, just as they come to you. If you want to use it as a notepad, feel free. I just really wanted to go back up because I did notice that some people had mentioned some things. Okay, that's basic rights people need to learn, yes. Veronica says, thanks for the invite. Knowledge and wisdom has no gender barriers. Powerful statement, very powerful statement. Rosalind McKelvey says, thank you for explaining the need to be more inclusive in the outreach for funds and planning as well. And Kate says, thank you for such an excellent presentation. Very eye-opening to the power of agriculture and women's equality. I agree, totally agree. Vera Cruz says, again, Andrea says a powerful presentation. Nicole Parkinson says that was insightful, thank you. Melissa Garrett says, are there any charities or organizations who focus on providing agricultural tools and machinery for countries that have difficulty providing these items for agricultural workers? Are there any that you come to mind, Your Excellency, or is this something that you'd recommend?
They are, but they are so few and require so much bureaucracy to get it. But the reality is that you and me could fix some of these problems out of the box.
Exactly.
That is how easy it is. So this is my prayer, that we would somehow, those of us who are here, we would somehow find a way to get together and see how we can get these things to those people and just take it from there, because there is a serious problem with agriculture, climate change, and world hunger. I just want to point out also, you know, the fence that man was talking about, his fence, that green thing, that's actually a fisherman's net. He used to be fishing. Yeah, he used to be fishing, but the climate change made the fish to go further into the ocean, and he didn't have a big enough boat to go that far. He used to fish, and his wife will smoke the fish and sell. So now he's just being creative, but that's just to show you how resilient some of these people are. They're just waiting for you and me to come and help them. So he transforms his own nets into a fence, a makeshift fence, which obviously is not working. It's not keeping up the goats. He's waiting for us to come and step in. And there are many others like that across the world. Let's do something together. Let's get out of the bureaucracy. Let's do something together.
Definitely. Thank you so much. Yes, Dr. Adar has also said teaming approach for result oriented. Yeah, for results, the teamwork does help the dream work. Kede Ibis Adigan says a very wonderful presentation, an interesting outlook on the SDGs. Thank you so much. So thank you again for your time. Thank you for your presentation. Thank you for the passion behind the research. We could hear the passion. I mean, I could feel it, but I'm sure we can all hear it coming through. We really appreciate that. So Veronica has one question that I will ask just before we move on, and it just says about problems with irrigation. I know waiting for the rain is also a problem.
Absolutely. That is where, when we get into a more scientific approach toward agriculture, we will deal with all those things. We would deal with greenhouse farming. I mean, there's just lots. And guess what? Because of irrigation and all those things, we're also going to solve another of the SDGs, clean water. So, I mean, it's just like, oh my God, please, can you guys just get some equipment down to those women and girls already, you know?
I agree. And it's interesting because, you know, the thing is, that's why we need people like yourself who have such an interest in such an area that the majority of people aren't looking, and also have a different perspective and a different outlet. Because in as much as even I would love to say that I have a quite confident awareness of the agriculture sector, I hadn't really thought about it in some of the ways that you've outlined today. So definitely thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
All right, so thank you for everyone for also using the chat box and allowing this to be a two-way conversation, or I think it's currently a 52-way conversation. And really using the chat box and engaging with us is so important, because of course we're all here to talk with you, and just because we're behind a screen doesn't mean the conversation can't be two-way. So please use that chat box. But next up, how lucky are we today? We still have more blessings to come our way. So next up, on the topic of quality and inclusive education, Her Excellency Ambassador Dr. Diana Kennelly will be speaking. So please, I'd like you to take the stage. So Her Excellency is, hold on, let me just remove my screen again. Sorry, is the ambassador for works with the John Maxwell leadership team. Please forgive me for
Maxwell
that.
leadership.
Yes, John Maxwell leadership team. Thank you. So please feel free to take the stage.
Thank you so much for such a wonderful platform for all of us to come together. Your Excellency, Dr. Ada, thank you so much for the invitation and for always creating room and environments where we can come to talk about things that are going to move us forward. Your Excellency, Dr. Ba Teresa Ibas, thank you so much for the work that you're doing with DMF and for inviting us to be part of this amazing conversation. And to Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, all protocols observed. It is an honor for me to be here with you to celebrate the CSW66 and to be able to have this conversation on quality and inclusive education. What an amazing time to be alive. I always, in this conversation where we're talking about women and young women, it's always good to remind ourselves that as of September 2021, there were 26 nations that are led by women. And so we need not look too far for examples of leadership. And the reason it's exciting to be in this time is that even with the global pandemic, what we have found, or what research has found and has been reported, maybe not widely, is that the nations that were led by women managed the pandemic more effectively. Isn't it amazing that this is not news? This is not being spoken about. And I think that that is really powerful because we're the only ones that can begin talking about this and pointing to this. So I want to do two questions really quickly. You don't have to have the answers. What was the first nation that had a female president or a female prime minister? Do we know? It's not Liberia. It's
Would
not
that be
India
New Zealand?
either.
Would
No.
that be New Zealand?
No, it's from the 1960s. Sri Lanka. And she came into power because she had watched her husband lead the nations. And when he passed away, she was the only one that was the most qualified to lead the nation. And subsequently after her, her daughter also rose to lead the nation. So leadership can be learned and women can be good at it. The second trivia question I have for you is, who is the youngest climate change activist in this generation? Who emerged as the youngest climate change activist? That's correct, Anais and Laura, Greta Thunberg. And I want to highlight that because I think she was at the United Nations, or she was giving a press conference. And one of the things that really grabbed or that I paid great attention to, if we listened to her, 16 years old, the youngest climate change activist, 2019, is she said this: I am not supposed to be here talking to you about this. I am supposed to be learning. I'm supposed to be in class. gaining my education. And if we listen to just the power of what she said, because sometimes to lead well, we have to listen and to learn. She said, I am only here because you're not doing what you're supposed to do. Every generation has its solution to solve. So the question is, in your generation, whatever generation you find yourself in, what are the problems that you are solving? Because leadership is about solving problems. And how are we listening to younger generations and beginning to move forward and creating a pathway so that we can pass on the baton effectively? Because the work needs to be continued. The work does not stop with us, right? So let's talk about inclusive education. Inclusive education values diversity and unique contributions each child brings to the classroom or learning environment. Quality education focuses on the whole child, their social, their emotional, their physical, and cognitive development. Quality inclusion is the inclusion of children with disabilities in when we identify this at the very beginning. In this age of information, your ignorance is your choice and your decision. In this age of information, your ignorance is your choice. Some of the principles that we need to carry forward are equal opportunities, non-discrimination, universal access, and needs are things we need to take into account. So how can we begin this work? We begin to respond to the learners' voices. How are we listening? Listening is the most powerful tool. Harvard research in 2018 found that the number one way that people feel loved is when they are listened to. So in this work that we're doing, in this work that we're loving, in this work that we are passionate about, how are we listening? Listening to learn and then to lead well. Many times when we walk into these rooms where we have nations represented like they are in this room, how are we leaving the way that we lead so that we can listen, learn, and then lead effectively? How are we going to begin to encourage active participation of learners? How are we going to encourage positive teacher attitudes? How are we going to empower effective teacher competencies? And how are we going to champion visionary school leadership? In this decade of action, we need to do a few things. We need to examine what we have gained, what we have learned. We also need to examine what we will need to move forward. Not only do we need to develop the current generation of leaders, we also need to, at the same time, begin to develop the next generation of leaders to lead now and in the future. This amazing future we are envisioning here is empowered by the collective dream that we have for women and for girls. So we are the carriers of a dream that will impact us and others in a great way. So who is the source of this dream, and how are we ensuring that every generation is represented in this conversation? How are we making sure that we are walking through doors that only God can open? The dream is also what we are uniquely called for and uniquely talented for. So what is the thing that is drawing us to this? So we saw how Her Excellency Ambassador Bokwe is passionate about agriculture and the sciences, right? She is passionate about that. We know that she is uniquely gifted to see that path so clearly. Every one of us needs to identify what we are uniquely talented and uniquely gifted for, because women not only birth nations, women literally lead nations, right? So how are we going to reimagine the future for girls and women? Because yesterday's success is not enough for tomorrow. So what lessons do we need to take with us forward? Also recognizing there is loneliness in a dream. People buy into the leader before they buy into the dream. So the best thing that we can begin to do is to develop yourself and buy into yourself. Develop our youth and let's buy into them. And let us show them how to buy into themselves. The next thing is, what is the hunger for this passion that we have to see women and young girls receive quality and inclusive education? Because dreams don't work unless you do. The best view comes from the hardest climb. So let us not give up on the climb, and let us share the lessons that we have learned. Let us share how we have missed the mark, because it is when we do that that we can move from me to we. Great leadership is grounded in empowering others to move forward. If we have the right response to failure, it will develop character in our lives. The lessons that we have learned from our failures, each one of us, is what has uniquely positioned us for where we serve today. And so, as I close, to every girl and to the girl in you, we believe in who you are. We believe in the calling on your life. We believe in the process of your making. We believe in you, and everyone deserves to be led well. And I am a champion for developing the leader within you. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Yeah, we're all clapping. Applause, applause, applause all around. Thank you again. We are so spoiled. We are on our third amazing presentation, everybody. Isn't this great? Isn't this great? A great thing to be doing on a Wednesday. This is an amazing Wednesday. Yeah, I totally agree. Okay, so again, I have notes. So I'm going to try and there were a lot of notes. But I'm going to keep it to a few, so I can also do the chat, and the chat is popping off as well. So there were 26 nations led by women as of the end of last year, you mentioned, am I right? So I want to misquote.
September 2021.
September 21, thank you. The nations that were led by women managed the pandemic more effectively, right? Turns out Sri Lanka had the first female leader. Who knew? None of us. So can we please all, I think we all need to make a note of that one.
I think that is so powerful, because it lets us really pick real life examples to show that this can be done. This is possible. We lived in this time.
Exactly. And then you move straight into Greta Thunberg, which again is another wonderful thing to be able to know that we lived in her time period as the youngest climate change activist. And then the rest of these are a little bit more quotey, I think. So, and questions, calls to action. So you asked, how are you leading so you can pass on the baton effectively? And I believe that is such an important question, because, you know, culturally speaking, and just actually as people, we do tend to lead from a very selfish perspective. And so when we, you know, when we're sick, when we're out of it, when we're down in despair, it's really hard to pass the baton on, because we don't keep track of how we do things. So we don't log our processes, we don't log our operating procedures. And so even passing the baton on is difficult to do, because really we haven't maintained a knowledge base. So I think if anyone, you know, is thinking, where do I start? I would definitely say start with a knowledge database, start by tracking the actions it takes to achieve the goals that you achieve, especially when you win and when you fail. Make a log of the failures and the successes, because the failures are very important. So no one has to make the same mistake twice. But thank you so much. That was an amazing call to action. It really made me think. Then next thing I noted down was, you said quality education focuses on the whole child. again, something that is so missing, right? Because, you know, and Her Excellency, Dr. Bokoy mentioned it earlier, what is a child learning if they arrive at school hungry, right? Exactly. So focusing on the whole child, have you eaten? Are you okay? How long did it take you to arrive here? Does childish travel, or how are things? And you know, a lot of things that I guess aren't done universally enough, but we know are fundamental to creating happiness. And again, I think it links into something that you mentioned when you said, how are we listening? Because even in terms of engaging the whole child, we have to also learn to listen to that child, to really understand the child, and then be able to teach them from a place of their understanding. I really like those. You also mentioned quality inclusion is all about inclusion of children with disabilities. Really, really, really key there. As an adult with a learning, I'm dyslexic, so I grew up with a learning disability. So it's really important, I think, that point that you brought across, and I really like that. In this age of information, your ignorance is your choice. That was a strong one.
Very powerful.
It was a very strong one. I felt that. I felt that terribly. And then yesterday's success is not enough for tomorrow. Felt that one as well. It's such a good point, because, you know, every day we do try to do our best for today, but the truth of the matter is we need to always be innovating and thinking about how we could do better, add more value, not necessarily how we can burn ourselves out and how we can work harder and work longer, but actually how can we achieve this goal more and more with a higher quality, higher standard for the people of tomorrow. You also said there's loneliness in the dream, so develop yourselves and develop our youth, and then buy into both. Again, I really, really like that. And the last note I have here is that the best view comes from the hardest climb. So thank you so much for that. Her Royal Highness Princess Chepi says, in SA, we say ouch when it hits home. I think a lot of things hit home for a lot of people. So let me just see how much I can just quickly skim over before we move on to the next speaker. Yes, I think a lot of us had very similar things. Bella Cockrell said she was snapping to everything that you said. Yes, Her Excellency Ambassador Professor Lisa Parks noted quite a few points, one of which was listen to learn, and then lead well. There's just so much here. So yeah, there's a lot. All right, so let's move on very quickly to the next speaker. So the next speaker is Her Excellency Ambassador Prophetess Lisa Parks. We'll be talking on cultural laws and community development. Her Excellency is the Ambassador at Large for Joy of God Ministries International. And I am excited. I mean, luckily I have a big notepad here, so I'd like to pass the stage on to you so I can start typing away.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Your Excellencies, distinguished guests. Cultural laws, or any laws, were established to be a type of guidance, even though the word law, quote unquote, gives the impression that it's permanent. However, as people grow, mature, become educated, and more importantly, empowered, laws can be modified, changed, and even sometimes done away with. But when we are speaking about cultural, we are talking about a person or a group of people's way of life, thinking, and being. We can sometimes be referring to cultural biases as well. And a bias is a prejudice in favor of or against one thing, person, or a group compared with another, usually in a way considered unfair. But we are here as a group to not change anyone's culture, but should be coming alongside and sharing tips and ways to better improve an old mindset, an old way, and an old way of thinking. And that sharing and input cannot be done in big ways, but in small, doable pieces. There's a proverb that says, how do you eat an elephant? Well, you eat it one bite at a time, and that's how we will accomplish our goals. As I have traveled in and out of Africa for the past 17 years, I spent a great deal of time observing the ways of the people in my beginning years. Things are done very different from the East Coast to the West Coast, and from the north of Africa to south of Africa. There is no one right way. Our job is to help improve
And I don't mean improve by saying your way is wrong in favor of our way in the Western world, but we come along with different information that will help encourage women and children to be empowered to think and then change their own ways. I don't have any stats to quote to make me sound more intelligent, but what I have is passion and time-tested, proven experiences of bringing ideas to women and families and seeing results almost immediately. For example, encouraging a father to sit on the floor and play with his son. Helping him to understand that you may be a pastor, the leader of a community of organizations, but when you come home, these children don't want a pastor, they want a dad. As I have watched the father and son play with Legos and build hotel complexes, I watched creativity not just expand, but explode as ideals were unlocked. As I helped teach a young son to cook simple meals to help his mother, who was a pastor, a school teacher, a principal, and a mom, I watched the children finally understand and be able to see their mother in an entire complex of who she is, and they want to help. As I have planted a library and encouraged recreational reading and personally carried 150 pounds of books on the plane, I observe the bend of the children of the school. I see the difference in the school curriculum and in the education by including library time. I brought books that taught about different cultures and languages. See, their physical body may not be able to go these places, but their minds, the greatest nation ever, is your imagination. And when given the tools, their imagination can take them anywhere and everywhere. I see the school adding different career choices like chef and sports added to their career days. As I watch the children run and play, I bought the equipment necessary that would help develop the child. I began to pray for sports directors to help the children who had a talent in the sporting area. And today, right now at 1:12 p.m. America time, my children in Africa are hosting for this weekend, starting today, the first ever government-approved inter-house sporting competition. So y'all pray for the Sapphire House, because that's the house that I'm the matron of. Go Sapphire House. That's why I'm dressed in my blue today. Back to the point. As we continue to help women become empowered, we will find community development that will continue to bring change and that will be beneficial to all of the people. And where there is change, there is development. And each generation will change culturally and developmentally. The keeping of some cultural laws and traditions are doing more harm to future generations and families as generations are being exposed to more technology and cultures of the world. Some things have to change. But where there can be change, we fit in where we can get in. But as I always say in empowering people with knowledge and information, real help leads to real empowerment. So as we move forward, our action plan must be that we will become vested and invested on a more personal way, both financially and emotionally. One of my mottos is each one reach one, each one teach one. So we as a collective group, as a community of strong women can and will make changes in the lives of our girls as we reach out to at least one girl, one woman, one family at a time. And together, all of our individual work will result in less uneducated, vulnerable women result in less uneducated, vulnerable women and girls. Now, my background says they whispered to her that she can't weather the storm. And she whispered back, I am the storm. For the development of Africa, it lies in the hands of women. Thank you so much for your time and your attention. God's best blessing on all of us and our work. Thank you so much.
Sorry, I needed to finish typing my sentence. Oh, thank you again. Thank you again. I feel like I'm being a very good student today, everyone. I hope you've all got your notes. Let me start with the chat box actually before I jump onto mine this time. These presentations are so moving. They are. In fact, I would say, Your Excellency, yours was more moving because of the storytelling in there. So one of my main points is storytelling is key. It really framed everything you were saying, the fact that you had a story in there really nicely. Cheerleading for Sapphire House, yeah. Go Sapphire House. Another great call to action, and congratulations on that. So that's the first ever government approved inter-house competition, isn't it, you mentioned? Perfect, thank you. And then I also noted down just a few points that you made. You said, where there is change, there is development. And I just thought it was really interesting that you mentioned that, because change is really hard for most people to take themselves through. But as you said, it's actually very accurate. Where there is change, there is development. The issue is, can we gather ourselves together to organize, be organized, and I guess take ourselves through and be supportive enough to guide ourselves through the relevant change so we can develop and grow. So thank you for that. You said we can make changes in the lives of our girls if we reach out one at a time, which again, you know, the point about you made about the elephant, how to eat an elephant, which again is really key, isn't it? Because a lot of times we do feel like, how do we get onto that? How do we move forward with something? You know, we always perceive it to be so much, but actually you're right, one girl at a time really does make the change. And actually it doesn't even have to be a young girl. I'm sure it's just one woman at a time would make the necessary change. The development of Africa lies amongst its women. Again, something, you know, very similar to when Her Excellency Dr. Diana spoke, you know, making the point that it's not a surprise that the female-led countries did well, and it's a shame that it's not a surprise that they did so well. Actually, again, it's not a surprise that the development of Africa lies amongst the women. It's just a shame that we have so much work to do to develop those women so that we can grow in the right direction. I love this. Oh yes, Nicole Parkinson said, mentioned about weathering the storm. Yes, said you wish you could weather the storm, but she is the storm, right? She is the storm. Really, really like that. Stop looking at the big picture and find your part in the kingdom agenda and do your part. Yes. Nicole says the best nation is the imagination. Yeah. Edmund Echo said impressive women are indeed the bedrock of every nation as they are supreme. Oh, well, thank you so much, Edmund. We appreciate you. And Dr. Adar has asked what you consider should be significant in achieving education and enabling opportunities for vulnerable girls in communities. So I guess there may not be too much time to elaborate on that. And I'd like to leave you some opportunity to think about that, because it's quite just a little bit of a big question, if you don't mind. And then we'll move on to the last two speakers, and we can bring that back as the first question once we're finished. Is that okay? Right, perfect. So let's move into discussing the future of girls in communities of developing countries. So for this, we have Miss Mary Kurek, who's President and CEO of Frontrunners Development Incorporated and Director of Youth Together Global. So thank you so much, Mary.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. And thank you, Dr. Ada, for inviting me to speak. And what a great distinguished panel. And I have really, really enjoyed listening to everybody. And, you know, I love the note taking. So thank you very much, Tanisha. So let me just give you just a little bit about me first so that you understand where from I speak. I am the founder of Frontrunners Development, Inc., and it's a global business development agency that focuses on impact spaces specifically. So we embrace all the United Nations SDGs, but work more specifically on number 17, which is partnerships, of course, for all the goals. Not going to get 16 without that 17th, okay? It's our theory. We manage a community of about 500 innovators and dignitaries and host a global impact-focused media platform. Knowing that I have the media platform is going to be kind of key, because a lot of the stories that I share come from my interviews from people around the world. So hopefully that helps you understand my sort of foundation. So I want to begin by sharing a quote that I'm sure rings familiar to you. Young women are the first victims of economic instability around the world. They represent the majority of the 628 million young people aged 15 to 24 who have neither a job nor education. So this comes from the report published by Plan International, which was entitled Young, Woman, and Unemployed, the Triple Challenge. So problem identified, we know that, right? So knowing that, let's turn our attention to the frightening challenges associated with COVID and climate change. We don't have to list the problems, we've been living them. And if we weren't living them, we certainly can see them on the television every day in the news. But in 2021, it was according to some of the most popular innovation publications that I found out there, that it was considered one of the most innovative years we've seen in the world. Forced to find solutions for vaccines, employment, medical equipment, education, and a broken supply chain, the problem solvers of the world went to work. And among other things, we bumbled our way into online work and online education, which is now considered an irreversible norm in some places. In the race to fix our climate issues, a movement has evolved over a few years that has pushed recycling past just an action to do and into an industry called circular economy, providing opportunity for, of all things, blockchain to connect, to trace, and promote good behaviors. Technology transfer solutions have started showing up from odd sources like space and genomics, contributing opportunities in agriculture that help crops grow better in less than ideal conditions. These are just some examples to help us grasp that when situations are extreme and urgent, people become stronger than ever. And when that happens, solutions are just a breath away. So let's explore some realities. Recently, a mentee of mine, an 18-year-old girl living in Nigeria, contacted me about a scholarship opportunity she came across in Canada. Not even halfway through her higher education in microbiology, she informed me that her university had closed doors. When she told me it was because the government wasn't paying the teachers, I looked it up and it was all true. Not only that, but I found another headline from July of last year. Nigerian state closes schools after 140 students kidnapped. In that incident, 13 schools were closed. This was the fourth mass kidnapping for ransom in about 5 months. This kind of activity is reported by Nigerian news sources as accounting for more than 70% of Nigeria's school dropouts. And it was further reported that the government's response to shut down schools instead of dealing with the crimes that were committed was unacceptable. And of course it is. Safety in schools is a real issue, but just the opportunity for an education is an even bigger one. That's what we're here for, right? In a recent conversation with Fawzia Kufi, the first woman deputy speaker of Afghanistan's parliament, she shared the story of how her father fought to develop schools for children as a politician in their district, and yet would not allow his own girls to go to school for fear of losing votes. Fawzia achieved education on her own at some point, and it gave her confidence and courage to claim herself so that she could become the spokesperson she needed to be for human rights. And it is also the reason she began opening schools herself. So here's the takeaway. We all know how critical education is to earning a living, but when you have an example of how it builds courage to step into leadership, then in certain places of the world, it's the courage building that becomes the turning point on human rights. Putting a huge spotlight on human rights helps, but it's such a slow process. And as we consider coming out of a devastating pandemic and the relentless battle on climate change, where then are the opportunities for vulnerable girls? Is the situation extreme or urgent enough to activate innovation? Given the current status of the world, new issues are emerging to take the world's attention, but there are some pathways to solutions for education where vulnerable children live. Likely not what you'd think. What and where they are just need to be made visible. In the country of Cape Verde, Africa, there is an English development center founded and operated by a consul general for the Federation of International Gender and Human Rights. Princess Adewale believes so strongly that English is what will open doors for young people there that she's begun teaching English as a subject in every course they offer at the center in the English language. She has just opened a kindergarten to start teaching young children the language. My company is working with her on a smart village project that will help her expand the center and its educational offerings. The leader of that project is a former US congressman who happens to be very active in the Rotary Club. When she mentioned needing school supplies, he organized a partnership with a US school and the National Guard through his Rotary Club to secure those supplies. The center is an educational pathway. to other pathways. And now they have a partner. The takeaway in this case is that education pathways need connections to partners in order to sustain, grow, and be visible to those in need. In Malawi, one such pathway is a human trafficking shelter for young girls owned and operated with loving care by a farmer turned diplomat from Israel. He ensures that the girls receive education while in his care and beyond. We are partnering with him to expand his farm and thereby expand his shelter operation. In India, there's a pathway to education and trade skill development funded and operated by a woman who grew up in the same slums, right where she operates her charity. The takeaway here is that education it isn't just happening in schools. We must pay attention to and lift all pathways to opportunities for education. For the most vulnerable girls and boys, this could be their golden ticket because these pathways aren't prejudiced by anything except need. These are just a few examples, and we all know that a few well-meaning folks aren't going to make the big difference in the long run. There just simply aren't enough pathways. But what we do know is that those from vulnerable areas who actually manage to acquire education usually will open up pathways for others. We just need more, and they need to be visible. It's another call to action right there. Once a girl discarded as trash in the caste system of Nepal, Bishnu Periyar managed the degrading journey she had to do to achieve education and now has created a movement to set aside caste boundaries so girls could turn into women who have a chance at a good life. Like Bishnu and Fozia, we know that when you get a woman leader in the right place, you'll start to notice more pathways opening. Ask the people in Tanzania who now have their first female president. Leaders who have met the challenge of learning and have won become our greatest light to opportunity. Noticing the gap in training for many youth who have expressed interest to me in governance and diplomatic opportunities, I partnered with a UN ambassador living in Saudi and a sub-Saharan Open University president in Nigeria, along with another US member of my community to develop the Global Governance and Diplomacy course. Officially announced this week, we garnered interest from 2 international organizations to partner, and people of all ages everywhere are showing interest. What we did was to open a very specific pathway. The takeaway here is train people to become good public servants, and the roadblocks to equal education will start to disappear. In summary, innovation is most prevalent when urgency meets challenge. And we must meet challenges by innovating new pathways and shifting thoughts. What I've shared today is just a glimpse of small efforts, but maybe they will stir some different perspectives. In closing, I'll summarize my takeaways. So number 1 is education builds courage to fight for human rights that circles back to benefit education. Pathways, number 2, pathways to opportunities need to be made visible, and they always start with partnerships. The bigger and stronger the partnership, the better and more accessible the pathway. Number 3, any avenue to good education in a safe and loving environment is a pathway, no matter where or how it's happening. These are pathways that could lead to more and better opportunities. Number 4, train those who lead nonprofits and aspire to public service to create laws and policies in a way consistent with equality and greater good. Everyone wins. So how all of this impacts girls in education, I think we must look broader than the issue of education as applies to jobs, economics, and poverty. We all want equal opportunity for education, but going to school is no good if you're afraid you'll be attacked and the school won't protect you. The water is unsanitary, or the school closes its doors when the government won't pay the teachers, or there's a hostage taking. Education won't fix a girl being raped by a drunk uncle after school who the family protects because of shame. The fact that there's a gap in numbers for lack of education in vulnerable areas isn't the biggest problem. The reason a gap exists in the first place is where our most important work lives. And for that, we need new pathways and a whole bunch of faith. And we have that. Thank you all, and God bless you for everything that you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you, Mary. So again, we've all been taking notes. Number 1, education brings courage. Number 2, pathways need to be made visible. We need new pathways and a whole bunch of faith from Her Excellency, Prophetess Lisa Parks. Talia says, innovation is the most prevalent when urgency meets a challenge. That's a very true point. Vera Cruz says, thank you, Miss Mary, for this eye-opener. As an EcoSoc member with the UNNGO/DPI, we know that for you to get things done. Partnership and networking is the key. We look forward to partnering with you for everyone to win. I really like that. Yes, I recall when you get a woman in the right place, you'll see pathways open as well. Let's see, Sanya Ogunlade said, thank you all. As an educator and someone that has participated in various NGO projects, I have found this very useful, informative, and inspiring. Amazing. I did see at some point that there were a couple of hands up. I saw that April Ripley and Francis Osani had hands up. So please feel free to type straight in or send me a direct message if you wanted to ask something. Yes, I think we're good there. Sharon Lockhart says, Mary, thanks for highlighting the gaps, the need for pathways for education and support for girls and youth. And that requires partnerships, which starts with dialogues like this. I agree. So some of the notes I had written down, one was a question: where are the opportunities for vulnerable girls? You know, that's one of the things that really drew me when I first met with Her Excellency, Dr. Barrister Teresa Ebas, was her passion for actual people in that vulnerable state. And of course, there's definitely quite a lot we can do with, you know, with young girls once they are at a place where they're ready for us to engage with them. But actually, I think a lot of thinking does need to go into what we do with people who are still vulnerable and in that vulnerable state. You also mentioned that new issues are taking away the world's attention. Again, really key. Really important thing for us to think about is actually how we ensure that the vulnerable people do get the, what did you say? Do get the visibility that they need in this particular climate. You also mentioned that 70% of the dropouts in Nigeria were due to underpaid staff, as well as the crimes, of course, kidnapping and things, which is obviously something we need to think about and perhaps something that none of us have thought about enough. And then, of course, on the topic of pathways, you said that there aren't enough pathways. Those who are able to access education will usually actually open up pathways for others, given that they have visibility. But of course, these pathways to opportunities will always need to be started with the right partnerships in place. So I think that's a really strong call to action. And I'm really glad that some people have taken it on and have really started thinking about how they'll enter partnerships. This in itself forms an amazing partnership for that. And so just the fact that we're all here shows our availability for that. So I hope that more will continue on. However, we only have 30 minutes left, and I'm aware that Dr. Adan is very aware of my timekeeping. So I shall, with excitement, move on to our last speaker, Her Excellency Ambassador Dr. Vanessa Rosa, who works who's the District Business Manager for the Department of Education for New York City and the Director of Programs for Ruth Sisters Fellowship International. Thank you so much, Your Excellency, for joining us. And I would like to pass over the microphone to you.
Thank you, thank you. With the grace of our Most High God, it is an absolute pleasure to express accolades of acknowledgement to Dr. Ada Juno Okika, Her Excellency Dr. Barrister Teresa Bias, Ambassador Reverend Dr. Bulkwe Burnley, Moderator Tonisha Tago, Ambassador Dr. Diana Kinley, Miss Mary Curick, and Ambassador Prophetess Lisa Parks. Greetings to everyone, greetings to you all. So in order for us to understand how policy and advocacy affects and affirms the government and private sector commitments to achieving education and enabling opportunities for vulnerable girls in the context of climate change in a post-COVID-19 era, we must acknowledge that policy and advocacy work hand in hand to achieve the greater for the good. Advocacy first starts in the courts of where the policy exists. It is, however, most practiced that advocacy most often begin at the ground level where there is a cry for such change. When the cry works its way up to where both the policy and advocacy works hand in hand, then we see movement. There must be assurance that outdated practices prior to COVID-19 are no longer acceptable as the norm for educating our children, especially young girls. Due to the many educational setbacks since this COVID-19 era, the calls for government and private sector commitments must be even greater now than ever before. Therefore, we must acknowledge that there is a global need for education reform and implementation. To imagine, as defined by Webster, the Merriam-Webster dictionary, means to form a mental image of something not present. To imagine, as defined by the Cambridge English Dictionary, means to form or have a mental picture or idea of something or someone. To imagine, as defined by the Macmillan Dictionary, it means to form a picture of something in your mind. So my question to you today, to my policymakers, to the governments, and to the private sector leaders, why have we moved towards reimagining an education that was never a reality in the first place? Let us advocate for the implementation of policy that will embrace the notion of global proficiency that expresses the understanding and skills students require in the 21st century. Global proficient students must have the insight and the skills to explore the world. Global competence starts by being cognizant, inquisitive, and engrossed in learning about the world and how it works. The exploration of learning within a global context is about enabling scholarly capabilities that allow learners to discover a variety of viewpoints, comprehending the associations and access to the world around them, effectively engaging in respectful communications and collaborations that crisscross cultural boundaries, and life experience in accordance with acquired education to be utilized as foundational support to explore worldly issues and matters called for global action. Access to global learning should not be limited to the have and the have-nots. We are living in times where global and local perspectives have global impact for reactions. Access to global education should be considered a holistic perspective as we look towards educational achievement for the inclusive well-being of the scholar. The global economic state is tied to international trade. There are over 40 million scholars in the US that depend on this association. As we see since COVID-19, this has opened the doors for crisscross cultural skills, working from one location and interacting across the globe. The demand for diversity, inclusion, and equality are in high demand by corporations and institutions worldwide. Global education can also have personal implications and can be tied to a scholar's identity. Socio-emotionally, the global learning perspective can deepen awareness of respect, business relations, knowledge of worldviews, and diversity amongst individuals and specific groups. So this in return tells us that there is a needed commitment from governments and private sector leaders. A recommendation for governments and the private sector to be aligned or in alignment for sustainability. This means to align governments and the private sector commitments to the United Nations 2030 Sustainable Development Goals, which identified by the United Nations are an urgent call for actions by all countries, developed and developing in a global partnership. The purpose of this recommendation is to solidify the validity of the commitments by the government and the private sector and to answer its call to action by the United Nations. The means of implementation of the SDGs are key to realizing and aligning the commitments of governments and the private sector to United Nations agenda. While I won't list all the goals and targets, I will follow up with an outline of the list of SDGs which provide an immediate correlation with the current standing of government and private sector and are of equal importance to the other SDG targets. Oversight of a revitalized global partnership for sustainable development supported by the concrete policies and advocacies must be implemented at once. We must fully commit to the support in transforming the world. Let our partnership work in spirit of a global solidarity to achieve the desired outcome. Let's begin with a particular concentration among the poorest and with people in the most vulnerable situations globally. We must facilitate a rigorous global engagement in support of implementation of the listed goals and targets, bringing together governments, the private sector, civil society, the United Nations system, and other factors while mobilizing all available resources. The said government and private sector commitments draws the correlation to align the following United Nations 2030 Sustainable Development Goals and its specific targets to meet these initiatives. SDG 1, end all poverty in all forms, everywhere. SDG 4, quality education, ensure inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning opportunities for all. SDG 5, gender equality, achieve gender equality and empower all women and girls. SDG 10, reduce inequalities within and among countries. SDG 16, peace, justice, and strong institutions. Promote peaceful and inclusive societies for sustainable development, provide access to justice for all, and build effective, accountable, and inclusive institutions at all levels. SDG 17, partnership for the goals. Strengthen the means of implementation and revitalize the global partnership for sustainable development. In conclusion, policy and advocacy should be implemented to advise governments and private sector leaders on matters pertaining to the facilitation of global education. Systems should be understood and followed by governments and private sector leaders to ensure accountability. Policy should be internationally acceptable, credible, and reasonable. As governments and the private sectors position themselves for its goal accomplishments, the desired outcome will be that all students will have the access to develop in the following: critical thinking and problem solving, innovation, creativity, and entrepreneurship, learning to learn, self-awareness and self-direction, collaboration, communication, global citizenship, and sustainability. Adapting the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals mentioned in this delivery will excel the education of children globally, especially for girls, to envelop a more grounded and meaningful engagement for global change. We are reminded by the words of Martin Luther King Jr. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. As forward thinkers, movers, and shakers, let us forever be in the position of raising the status quo. Thank you.
Yes, I have everywhere. Okay, great. Just typing injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Love that. Wow, there's so much. Yes, so motivated. Are we not all so motivated? Thank you so much for that. All right, so we have 15 minutes left. And before we move on, I want to just, I'm going to introduce Dr. Adar so she can wrap this up, but I want to just highlight a couple of comments that were here. There is a need for global change in education. Edmund Eco says that he cannot agree with you more. Vera Cruz says, thank you, Her Excellency, Ambassador Dr. Vanessa. Indeed, advocacy and policy work hand in hand. We don't have enough women in politics to push for these policies that affect our gender, which will help transform society. I pray that UN Women, through Divine Mercy Foundation, can support us as we encourage, prepare, and support our young women to be involved in mainstream politics. Definitely, I agree. And I think, you know, it goes back to what the previous speaker said about starting with one girl at a time. So unfortunately, there may or may not be enough women moving into that area at the moment, but you know, I'm 36. At 35, I became one of the UK's youngest ever deans. And that didn't happen because I was in a group of other women that wanted to be dean. It just happened because along the way throughout my career, individual people thought I was a good focal point to focus their attention on. And so actually it does work out to go one at a time, because now look, I'm here with all of you. And so one at a time really does do a great job. So I think if we start there, Vera, that would be amazing. Miss Mary Couric said, neither words said with great authority. I felt the authority too, Mary. I felt as though I need to do exactly what Her Excellency Ambassador Dr. Vanessa Rosa told me to do. That is what I need to do today. Came right through the screen. So there's so much more also here. Nicole agrees as well. Sharon Lockhart says, wow, thank you so much. Love the quote as a reminder about injustice everywhere. Yes, Dr. Martin Luther King. Marjanita says, thank you for this most inspiring webinar. And just because I do keep notes on for what everyone said, what really kind of got me was about the fact that you said, why have we moved towards reimagining an education system that was never there in the first place? And it's so key because one of the things that I guess a lot of people fail to realize is that, you know, pre-colonized curriculums, people learn from the best person in the environment to teach. So if you were learning to cut trees, you learn from the best woodcutter in the community. If you were learning to kill a chicken, you learn from the best chicken killer in the community, right? We didn't have any one body certifying people for how they catch and kill a chicken. And moving more so, you know, into present day, we do have these educational structures, which of course, as a dean myself, I fully understand. And yeah, there is no need to be reimagining those because they don't work. We know they don't work. We know the legacies in them are things that just haven't moved because education is just not dynamic enough. So thank you so much for raising that particular point, and I'll leave the rest. And we shall move on to the amazing you know, person who invited us all. Thank you so much again, Her Excellency Dr. Teresa Ibas, and Dr. Ada Junior Kika is going to come next, and she's the UN consultant working with Divine Mercy Foundation for the Vulnerable Children and Less Privileged Community. So Dr. Ada, thank you so much again for this. Please, please, please do come in and let's hear from you.
Wow, what a day, what a day, what a day. I can't believe that we're almost very close to 2 hours event. The speakers, we are so excited, and they really provided the kind of strategy that Divine Mercy Foundation need in trying to make their own contribution to the CSW66 section. The parallel event of DM has also, from the speaker's presentation, responded to the theme of the CSW60 section by highlighting the need to, one, reevaluate climate actions towards environment change and climate, and also introduce mechanized agriculture to help in gender adjustment towards hunger and poverty. The presentation also helped to identify the need to develop our girls and help them to buy into themselves. We also help girls to identify their unique talents. There is also the need to develop strategies to help girls in vulnerable situations achieve quality and inclusive education and become a whole child. The presentations also called for the need to adopt the strategy of listening to learn and mentor girls in community to build their wall of edu-girl child in positioning their future. They also highlighted on the need to give girls the tool to take their imaginations around, provide education and activities that could help women be more empowered. There is also the need to set up pathways needed to make possible in order to bring education, to encourage the girls to education, and also support girls and youth in partnership. The event also pointed on the need for education reform and implementation that will include listening and learning skills for the girl child. These are many other points, but most specifically, we are looking at DMF calling on teaming approach for all, especially from this platform, to come together in trying to look at the issues of the girls in vulnerable situations. We all know that government cannot do all, and those in situations of circumstances and vulnerable communities seems to be neglected. And if we plug into the call, the clarion call of the United Nations of leave no one behind, we need to bring on board the global need for change in education and commit to making the future of the vulnerable girl child more sustainable. Let us now join hands in teamwork with Divine Mercy Foundation and lend the voices of vulnerable girls to the Bureau of Commission on Status of Women 66 Session on the future of vulnerable girls in the community. Thank you, moderator, for wonderful and exciting moderation.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so I think we had one small question. Dr. Nadal, would you mind if we went back to it? I think this was the question asked.
Go ahead. Go ahead. We can have 10 more minutes.
Okay, great. So it was the question asked. Let's see. I can get back there. A lot of good partners, NGO speakers. That was Mary. I'm lost. I think this was for Her Excellency Ambassador Prophetess Lisa Parks. Do you recall the question that we asked before? It was.
He said, why haven't we moved towards reimagination? Is that the question you're looking for?
No, that was more recently. That was a point from the last talk. Do you recall the question?
I don't.
Thank you for highlighting the gaps. Go, sorry? You don't? Oh, yes. It was actually your question, Dr. Ada. What do you consider to be significant in achieving education and enabling opportunities to vulnerable girls and communities?
No, that wasn't a question for I wanted, especially those on the attendees, to send in their comments on that.
Oh.
Yes, to send in what is their opinion. Since they don't have enough time for everyone to share their opinion, if they can share their opinion on the chat, what they think is will be the suggestion or contribution in their own opinion. Yes, it's not a question for me. Yeah.
Okay, all right. Well, if any of the speakers also feel like they could contribute to
that. Anyone who can put in down, what do you think? It will be the best approach to in achieving the achieving education and enabling opportunities of vulnerable girls in the context of climate change in post-COVID-19 era. Just share your opinions, 1 point, 2 points on the chat box, and then we'll be able to include that in our submission to this commission.
Well, while some people are probably gathering their thoughts, I mean, I would like to put something forward. I think the topic of entrepreneurship and the concept of entrepreneurship is one way in which we can creatively engage young people from vulnerable communities in the learning process. I found in my time teaching entrepreneurship, I work with young people from the age of 6, and actually just creating the environment creatively, you know, using imagination about a business concept, whether it's selling 5 leaves, how much can we sell this leaf? You know, the more trivial, the more lighthearted it is, actually, the more opportunities are provided for teaching communication skills. Okay, so how will I now convince Her Excellency, Dr. Teresa, to buy these 5 leaves for me? What should I say to her? How do you think she's feeling? Do I need to care about how she feels when she arrives? So we're able to teach quite a few things from, you know, emotional intelligence, language, basic communication skills, making sure the receiver understands the message that the sender has sent, etc. And I found that to be quite engaging, quite fun, especially when it's not really entrepreneurship, but it's more pretending. You know, the saying says she could sell ice to an Eskimo, right? So it's the whole concept of getting the young people together saying, could you sell ice to an Eskimo? How would you sell this ice to an Eskimo? What is ice? Should we change the shape? So, you know, we have opportunities for innovation, maths, English, science, creativity, and emotional intelligence in those dialogues. So that was just one of mine. I can see Vera has said, we need more women in policy making. And Zumla has also said we need more engaged women. So I guess perhaps just creating awareness is a theme coming through there. Perhaps just creating awareness, what young people are exposed to, what young women are exposed to, so that they're able to make decisions about which industries they do or they do not want to go into, which I think is another key thing. You know, people can't really imagine of going somewhere that they haven't really seen before or haven't heard of or don't know the words. You know, they always feel a bit confused and a bit different. All right, so Her Excellency Ambassador Professor Lisa Park says books is the key. Books and the imagination can transform the mind and soul. Totally agree. Infinix Notes says door-to-door approach will have a great impact on the girl child. Very interesting, very interesting. And I think it kind of ties in with the one at a time. Oh, Your Excellency, Ambassador Reverend Dr. Bokwe Burnley, you've got your hand up.
Okay, so to add to all the wonderful ideas that everybody is just contributing, I was thinking, especially in developing countries where democracy is not as it is idealistic in the Western world. And so coming with some of these ideas, which are basic human rights, seem revolutionary. So I've always thought that if we found non-threatening ways of passing through these ideas, say these ideas about gender equality and things like that, which are not usually always well received in some of those countries, maybe through music or drama or just something that looks like entertainment, but you will be surprised the lyrics of songs that remain within you and things, images that you've seen. So that, because usually if you just, in most of those countries, NGOs just come all out, with signboards, the next thing they are arrested, the next thing they are in jail, the next thing, you know, but using, you know, non-threatening, you know, methods out of the box, using the arts, and you can just imagine messages of hope and love and unity that will go across that easily through poetry, you know, and really affect change. So yeah, that's my contribution.
Thank you. It's a great contribution. I guess
I want to make one input to the charts, especially on the one that says we need to engage more women, get more women in politics. That's a very exciting idea. But my main concern is that, are women ready to engage themselves? Because in most situations, we are not ready to engage ourselves. And very few come out, which is not enough. If we are actually ready to engage ourselves, let there be more voices of women. And you know, when women are more, the other they will be afraid, they move in, they clear the way for us. But when we just have few women coming out to engage themselves, and then when they come and meet with intimidation, abuse, discrimination, they withdraw, they became afraid. So we need more women to let women, not that we need women to engage, we need women to accept to engage themselves. People will say, oh, we are busy with the children, we are busy with career, blah, 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 the whole front, our husband doesn't allow us, blah, 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 blah. These are flimsy excuses that push down a lot of talents, you know. And I said, when I hear such a thing, I wonder how people like Her Excellency, Dr. Teresa Ebas, how does she do that? She's a mother, she's a career woman, a legal practitioner, she's the wife of a Nigerian ambassador to Ghana, and she's a community activist, a woman. She's also trying to look at the community. So women should stop giving excuses and let us come out en masse. Why I'm saying this because time is now for the global community to revise their 76 years of United Nations strategy of men. We need to think twice. We need to think inside the box now. So let women think inside the box so that the girls in the community in vulnerable situations will reimagine themselves and remove the garment of vulnerability and begin to position themselves, because we have a lot of politicians, attorneys, leaders, you have future presidents in them. You know, they need to be more empowered. And it is we women who are also knowledgeable, who are also globally acclimatized, that should be able to come out and create the pathway for these girls to follow. So let us stop giving excuses. Women, stop saying you are this, you are that, you are that. There is need to say we need to engage more women. Let women engage themselves more. That's my contribution. Thank you.
Thank you. And I can see Excellency Dr. Barrister Teresa Ebas is ready to speak.
Yes.
Once again, I want to thank everybody. And Dr. Ada has said most of what I wanted to say, but I must add that after this meeting, this webinar, let's try and keep in touch with each other by asking each other how far we've gone with what we have started doing. We just shouldn't finish today and dump everything in the drain and think today's meeting has been successful and that's the end. No, we have to follow up. We have to learn to get together, encourage ourselves. Like Dr. Ada said, if we don't show the men we are ready, we love ourselves, we can work together, that's how we'll be tossing around and will not go anywhere. So I think we have to really show that we are cooperating. We have to help ourselves, because if we don't do that, the men will not even think we are ready for what we are saying. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think those are amazing closing words and very, very accurate. I'm not sure how you'd like to engage everyone, Dr. Ada. I believe that you'll develop some sort of a communication process so you can keep everyone in the loop.
Yes, everyone will get an email from now, the video, the everything, and I'll share all the contacts.
Sorry, Dr. Ada, not the men, but the world. I'm
yes.
not against the men.
The world.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we need, of course, the men are important to us. We can't do, but
Yes.
what is important that the women should come out more. The men are ready for us to come out, but we are not coming out.
That we are serious. Yes.
Yes, they want to see us. That we are not coming
us.
out. So they can't. So if you are not ready, they still sit on the seat. But when you come out, they allow you. So let's
as I said, we need these girls to be educated. Going into politics, they need education. Without the education, you cannot go anywhere.
Yes.
So that's the basic thing. Thank you all.
Thank you.
So thank you, Toshina, for your wonderful model. You are so excellent. I wonder, you are so skilled. So in fact, you have brought me over. You will be seeing my chance to come and moderate. That was excellent. You know, your skills, you make the event so relaxing. Everybody was involved, everybody was, you know. So that was excellent. That's a good one. So you see me very soon. Thank you, Your Excellency, Dr. Ibas, for your support, for your energy. In fact, at times I say, how do you do this? Meetings, diplomatic meetings, first ladies meetings, and it's all this. And you still make out time. I envy your strength. I wish when I grow up, I'll be like you.
You are encouraging me
thank
so
you.
much.
I thank.
When I think of you, I want to do more.
Yeah,
thank you.
I thank Ambassador Bokwe, always available, always detailed with research. I can't thank you enough for your time, and you sort of open the eye to this event. And then other speakers and even the sharing cued into your presentation. That was excellent. And to my Ambassador Diana Kinoli, wow, my sister from Florida. I thank you. You know, when you said first female president, you know, the whole world, I thought it's Liberia. I was about to type Liberia, and you said, no, it's not Liberia. I never knew about this history. You gave us a mental arithmetic to ignite actions. So that's wonderful. That's qualities of a leader. You know, a leader. She's always into leadership and education, and I admire her so much. You know, so that's excellent. And to Ambassador Prophetess Lisa Parks, you know, one thing with me and with me to her is that whenever she's on the line, I know there will be chat on. I know some chat will be active, you know. So when she said that, I told her another thing, and I brought it last night. I said they're all inclusive. So thank you for your sharing, for your input. And you see, you say you are not this, you are the storm. I don't know, many people are even claiming that people are saying that quote, something on the storm. You know? So it's excellent that we shared your input through the reading, the library, and the reading skills. So it's wonderful to learn this with you. So next time, I'll twist it the other way around and still lead you to the point. And to Ambassador Dr. Vanessa Rosa, you know, when I said this woman has been in education for more than 4 years, I don't want her to go into the girls alone. Let me give her the umbrella, the cap that fits her position. And that is advocacy policy, government intervention. You know, because most of the time we say, government is not doing this, government is not building school in community, government is not doing that, government is not doing that. So now we have gotten the skills on policy and advocacy. Everything is not by government. Even though government, democracy, government of the people, by the people, for the people. But then the situations where government cannot do, they have a lot on their tables. We can now come on, just as DMV is doing, focusing on community. Last June, a child from community was able to make presentation without reading. When she brought it, then we are having another one, the Day of the African Child, June 16. A child schooling in community, she read her speech from beginning to the end without looking at the paper. In the community, if such girl given the platform, she will end up becoming a president to one place.
Definitely.
You know, so these are what policies. So we don't, it is through the DMV that we knew about the girl, not through government. So what we're trying to say that the presentation of Dr. Rosa is a think tank for us to begin to address our thinking processes and begin to reimagine a better contribution to the development, to the growth and development for sustainability. Very soon, the decade of action is running out. We have at least less than 8 years to go. And we still have a lot to do. We started from Millennium Development Goal. Now it's Sustainable Development Goal because Millennium failed us. I don't know what would happen after 2030, whether sustainability also failed us. And then we become another one. So these are the issues. So let us cue in to this presentation. These are speakers who were selected. Cue into their ideas, their input, and their interventions, and see how we can move our own organizations as well forward for the interest of sustainability. So I thank you all for your time, and I specifically thank Her Excellency for bringing out this organization. It's very important. God bless you all.
Thank you. And thank you, everyone.
The CSW66 session is still on. If you are far, cue into UN Web TV and listen to their sharings and presentation from ministers from all the 193 member states. So it's very important. Ministers, NGOs, agencies, and gender advocates. Everyone is trying to ensure that the climate action and women are being redefined for sustainability. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, everyone. It's been lovely.
God bless you all. And thanks to all the attendees. Thanks to all the attendees for your presence, for your time. I hope we'll be able to provide one incentive with the other. I can see Ambassador Toyin Lawal. I can see Andrea Hammond. I can see the ones I know. I can see Minister Christy Case. I can see Eno Ibas from UK. I can see, wow, Eunice. Oh my God. I can see our brother Francis. I can see, oh my God. I can see Her Excellency Ambassador Margarita Lipley is also here. The chair of Women and Leadership. Oh my God. I wish I know your time. I would have brought you up. I want to bring her up to say hi. Your Excellency, I'm bringing you up to say hi to Dr. Ibas. Please come up a little for 1 second. Oh, she's not there. I think she's there. Is she in?
What is the website that you announced for UNTV?
UN Web TV. Yes.
UN
Web TV. Okay. Oh my God, I can't see my woman leader. I can't see her face. So thank you, Ambassador Toyin Lawal. Can you come in and say hi to? I can see your hand.
Please.
Up. Yes,
please.
I know Her Excellency want to see your face. Can you come in? I'm trying to promote you to come in.
Please.
Yes. She's not coming in.
Yeah. She's there.
She's there.
Her mic is on.
Oh, she's here.
Yeah, she's there.
Oh, she's there?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe there's a sound issue.
Yes.
Must be a sound issue. No worries.
Where is she? She's not coming in.
No, she's in. I think there must be a sound.
Yeah, I can see her, her voice, but can't hear you.
Ambassador Aida?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Hello, everyone. Wow. Wow, this is awesome. This is awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you, Ambassador Hibas, and thank you, Ambassador Lisa, Ambassador Vanessa, our sister Tanisha. Wow, great job. Thank you so much. This is beautiful. This is beautiful. Thank you. I just had, one simple thing to all the things that all our speakers have said. the vulnerability, we need to look into the areas that, it affects our young girls, especially in the area of mental health. It's a very important area for us to consider, because when all these girls are exposed to some of these vulnerable conditions and situations, they internalize a lot. So we as leaders need to have like succession planning for these young girls to support them in their mental health and how to actually navigate, some of the difficulties. So it's also very, very important as we are developing advocacy and policies regarding vulnerability and how to help and empower these young girls, and want us also to include the area of health, because there's a lot of peer pressure that all our young girls are going through in the area of social media attractions. Want to be like somebody and you don't have the power to be like that, or you don't have the finances. So a lot of it are going on, depression, suicidal thoughts, that is incapacitating our young girls. So I just want to mention that. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And Professor Lisa just told us that presentation going on women and vulnerable girls at the UN now. So I want to thank, and I also want to acknowledge Ruth Sisters Fellowship International down in the house. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you. Ambassador Ivan, one of our advisors, but because she's far away, thank you for coming out.
I'm always there in spirit.
Yeah, she's always there with us in spirit. So thank you all. And
just a minute, just a minute. Dr. Marjanita says she's back.
Oh my God, my first lady. Oh, my woman leader, please, we want to hear your voice.
Good evening to all. Dr. Ada, and your webinar today was just amazing, so inspirational. So I want to thank all of the speakers. You were exceptional. And this has been a tremendous session. I want to commend all of you for the job that you did. We're so proud of Dr. Ada and also Dr. Boquay Burnley. They're part of the Leadership and Women's Affairs Department of Walmart ICC, and we commend them for the job that they're doing and the impact they're making, not only here, but in this world. So I am just so excited about what you're doing. And I pray God will continue to strengthen you and bless you and take you into where he wants you to be. So God bless all of you and have a great day. Again, blessings to all.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Excellency. Thank you. Her Excellency, Dr. Teresa Ibas is the founder of Divine Mercy Foundation for Vulnerable and Children in Community. So she is also a gender activist. So it's one of the time, whenever she's in America, you'll be able to meet with her. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
God bless you.
Thank you.
So, thank you all for coming. And Tonisha, close up.
Yes. Yeah, I was just going to say thank you so much for joining me again. I think these are all the final words. It is really nice to hear from a few members of the audience as well, some special members. And so we look forward to seeing you at the next time that we reconvene. And in the meantime, please do look out for the email that will be coming out to you shortly, so you can have a recap on all of this information.
Yeah, join Ruth Sisters event on Saturday, March 19 at 10 a.m. to 12 noon. And 1,000 Women in Religion side event, same Saturday, 12 to 2 p.m. Join us, and also you'll be enriched. Thank you all for coming. God bless you.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.